We're going to take a break from talking about the Dolphins head coaching search on today's show to talk about some cut candidates, specifically 5 players that are under contract for Miami in 2026 that I believe new GM John Eric Sullivan could part ways with in order to create more cap space. And boy, is that something Miami desperately needs to do. As it currently sits of filming this on Friday, January 16th, Miami's cap space situation is pretty dire. Negative 26.3. And this is prior to the decision with Tua Tagovailoa, which, speaking of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, he is not going to be mentioned on today's show. I think it just gets overly complicated, and we've talked so much and so in-depthly on Miami releasing him and what the implications are. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think it would be a waste of time to mention him on today's show. So we're looking at 5 other potential cut candidates in-depthly on this episode. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and make sure you also have your notifications turned on. We've gained a lot of new subscribers, which we're appreciative, and I'm glad you guys joined us. But we put out 2 videos daily and come at you with breaking news. So make sure you have those noties on to all. Let's get up to 11K people with notifications on. The number 1 Dolphins cut candidate, in my opinion, is no one other than wide receiver Tyreek Hill. And this is not a surprise if you've been with the channel. I've been saying he's going to get cut this offseason for what it feels like a full-on year. He's 32 years old this upcoming offseason and has a $51.1 million cap hit in 2026. An otherworldly number on the books. But the intriguing part, well, he has no guaranteed money on his deal in 2026. And it is the final year of him in Miami as well, which tells me when you have that big of a cap hit, you're not under contract next year, and you have no guaranteed money, yeah, you're going to be cut. And I'll say it, it's the most likely and it's the most guaranteed player on today's list to be cut by new GM John Eric Sullivan. It's just all about how he wants to do it. Will he do it pre-June 1st? Will he do it post-June 1st? Well, there are benefits and negatives of doing each, right? If you do it pre-June 1st, you create more cap space, I would say, in 2027 when he does have a void year under his deal. But you only save about $22.8 million for your books this year, and you have a $28.2 million dead cap. But if you do it post-June 1st, and you do get 2 designations where you can cut someone prior to June 1st and say it's coming in after June 1st, you save $35.2 million in cap space and only have a dead cap hit of $15.8 million. There is quite the difference between pre-June 1st and post-June 1st. And to me, it just feels like an obvious decision, right? You get 2 designations for post-June 1st cuts. Tyreek Hill has to be one of them. Now, if the other cut is a Tua or a different player, which we'll talk about here in just a second, so be it. But there's just no way, in my opinion, that Sully looks at the Dolphins' books, looks at what they can do in terms of creating cap space, sees Tyreek Hill's cap savings if cut post-June 1st, and doesn't do that. Tyreek's been an awesome Dolphin on the football field over the last 3 seasons, but he's gone. It's simple as that. I think he's the most likely person to be cut on this Dolphins roster. But let me know yours. Pin comment on today's show. Drop a name. Who's the most likely to be cut? Number 2 on my list is Bradley Chubb, another guy that I've mentioned as being a cut candidate for Miami. And it's another veteran that is now on the plus side of 30 years old. Will be 30 in 2026. Now, the intriguing thing about Chubb is that he did take a revised contract in 2025 to stay with Miami because he was actually on the verge of being released last year as well, but stayed with the Dolphins on a revised contract and actually was a captain for this football team. And unlike some of these other names on today's show, he is under contract in 2027. The issue is he has a $31.2 million cap hit this year. Well, and in that final year in 2027. And even though he finished the year with 8.5 sacks, you look at his advanced pass rushing numbers for Miami this past season, and they weren't very good, right? His pass rush win percentage, low. The pressure's forced, a little bit lower. I know people will go out, well, that's the advanced stats. I like guys finishing sacks. Well, I like a combination of both because the top guys like a Micah Parsons when healthy, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. What do? They generate the most pressures, but they also get the most sacks. Bradley Chubb didn't generate a lot of pressures, but he finished a lot of sacks. That's more of, I think, an indictment on the rest of the pass rushing unit in Miami more than Bradley Chubb. Certainly think it's smart to release him, especially when you look at his savings. You cut him prior to June 1st, $23.8 million in dead cap this year and only $7 million in savings, but you save that full $31.6 million in savings in 2027. If you cut him post June 1st, you save way more money this year. It's a $13 million swing in terms of dead cap to savings in 2026, but you only save $18.7 million in 2027, $13 million less than what you saved if you cut him prior to June 1st. And that is the question that Sully is going to have to be asking himself and answering. Which year do you prioritize? Do you try to get the extra $13 million in cap space in 2026 by cutting him post June 1st? Or do you ultimately cut him prior to June 1st and take that extra $13 million and add it to your 2027 total? I believe it is probably likely Miami might cut him post June 1st. We'll see, though. 3 more cut candidates to get to here, but today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Playoff action begins today. You got divisional round matchups, and boy, are there good ones. And even though your fantasy football season is over, you don't got to wait until next year's draft to play fantasy football. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and you can hit when you are correct. If you want flexibility, choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Available in all 50 states. And you know what the beautiful thing is, folks? They have weekly specials. They have daily flash specials as well. And the special for this weekend is C.J. Stroud. It became live on Friday afternoon, all the way through his game on Sunday. 99% off, max discount. Just take more on his passing yards. He just needs 1. Pair that up with another projection, and you cash in. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Moving on to number 3 on my list. I'm going to go with Austin Jackson, the offensive lineman. I foreshadowed this at the end of this season, but I think it's time for Miami to give up on the former first-round pick in 2020. He's still relatively young. Yeah, he's 27, but here's the thing. The last year of his deal is in 2026. And he has been incapable of staying on the field for the Fins. I mean, he's played in 10 games once in the last 4 seasons. And maybe you can put a stamp on his importance because he was the right tackle blindside protector for Tua. Well, Tua is no longer starting at quarterback, which means the right tackle and the comfortability and kind of rapport there and trust isn't as key. It's still key for whoever's quarterback, but not as key. And I mentioned the games played. 2 games in 2022. Played 16 in 2023, which earned him that 3-year contract extension. But then ever since getting that deal, 8 in 6 games played in the last 2 years. You have to make the adjustment to move on from Austin Jackson. And cutting him is a little bit more tricky and less black and white, if you will, than Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill. Like, you don't save any money if you cut Austin Jackson prior to June 1st. But you do save money if you cut him post June 1st. But as I alluded to it earlier in the show, you only get 2 post June 1st 1 release designations for that cap relief. But if you are moving on from Austin Jackson, it feels like it's post June 1st or nothing. So does that take away from your ability to cut to a post June 1st, a Bradley Chubb, a Tyreek Hill? Well, you only have 2 designations, but I do want to make it very clear that doesn't stop you from having that happen multiple times. Like you could designate, let's say, Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill in March as post June 1st cuts, but also just wait till June 7th to release Austin Jackson and create $11 million in savings then. It's just a difference of when you actually get that cap relief. But I do think it's probably smart for Miami to maybe draft the right tackle or an offensive lineman, plan on them starting potentially, and replace Austin Jackson because you just simply can't trust and count on him being on the field in a week in, week out basis for this football team. Last couple cut candidates. Start at number 4, that being fullback Alec Ingold. And it's really unfortunate, in my opinion, because I really like Ingold, another player like Bradley Chubb that was a captain for this football team in 2025, but you create $3 million in savings if you cut him pre-June 1st. And you don't really get that much of a difference if you cut him post-June 1st. So to me, I think it's very likely that you take that $3 million in savings and $1.9 million in dead cap to move on from the fullback because the end of his time in Miami is just here. Mike McDaniel is no longer the offensive schematic guy, no longer the play caller, and no longer the head coach. And Mike McDaniel really put an emphasis on the fullback position. Alec Ingold knew the scheme in the offense like the back of his hand, inside and out. And with him gone and a full new system coming in, that new offensive system might not even require a fullback. And if it does require a fullback, it might not be the skill set that Alec Ingold has. So I imagine Sully will clean out Alec Ingold's locker, take the $3 million in savings, and if he needs to go add a fullback, he can do it as a UDFA in the draft and find a cheaper one than Alec Ingold getting paid the money that he's owed in 2026. I think Tyreek Hill's guaranteed to be cut, but out of the list of 5 players today, I actually think Alec Ingold might be the second most likely. And make sure you do subscribe. We told you to have your notifications on. Well, make sure you do subscribe, though, for daily Dolphins content. Join the family here at Dolphins Today. Final cut candidate for Miami on today's show. We're going to go to the kicker in the special teams unit, Jason Sanders. This one's a little bit of a hot topic, if I'll be honest, because I think Jason Sanders is one of the best kickers in football. But the issue is he didn't play for you last season with that hip injury, and you didn't really miss him. Like, it's just the truth. Riley Patterson was awesome. And I don't know what type of contract Patterson gets in free agents this year. I don't know if Sully would even be interested in bringing him back since he had nothing to do with Patterson being in Miami this year. But it just shows you that you don't really need to pay Sanders that much money because you can find a good kicker off the street that is just as good. And when you can save $3.9 million against the cap, and only have $663,000 in dead cap, which is practically nothing compared to some of the other names out there, it's certainly a name that you have to monitor as a potential cut candidate. Is it the most likely? I don't think so. I think I would put Alec Ingold and Tyreek Hill on there ahead of Jason Sanders. But I do think there's a large chance that Sullivan ultimately does cut Jason Sanders. So let's end the show here with a final conclusion, a final tally, if you will. I have no idea what Miami will do, but we said off the top of the show, you have negative $26.3 million in cap space right now. If you cut Tyreek Hill post-June 1st, Bradley Chubb post-June 1st, Austin Jackson post-June 1st, and then Alec Ingold and Jason Sanders pre-June 1st, you go from negative $26.3 million in cap space to in the positive at $47.2 million. Now, that's obviously before you make a decision on Tua, which could add less cap space, because if you cut him pre-June 1st, you add $40 million in cap space. So that's obviously a big question here in the equation. But you'd have a difference positively in $60 or $70 million in cap space. And you'd have $100.4 million scheduled in 2027 for cap space available to go out and make signings. That's before extensions potentially as well. Got to make a choice on Devon Achane and others, but you get my point. That will do it for today's show. We'll have you covered if anyone gets released on YouTube, but you'll hear about it first over on my social media. So go give me a follow at Nick_Roloff.